We return to Stargate SG-1 with a follow-up to the one with Ernest, that very, very old man who liked walking around naked. Daniel shows the 4 languages written on the walls there, believed to be corresponding with the 4 races who had met in that place. Important because a probe just revealed more writing in a style similar to one of those 4. Since another of those 4 was likely the Asgard, that means these guys were probably friends, so a visit sounds like a great idea for people looking for friends against the Goa'uld. The only problem is that they arrive and there's nobody there. In fact, it's just a medium-sized room, no windows, no doors, and a man has been murdered. No, there's just that writing in a circle on the floor. So it looks like they could have just looked at the photograph and saved a trip.
Daniel, how long you figure we ought to hang out here and scratch our cosmic heads?
Well, we can't just give up.
Why not?
We're embracing that attitude. The new salute of the SGC is the confused shrug. But O'Neill crosses over the writing, and that triggers a sinister-looking thing to grow on the wall, like some kind of giant xenomorph rectum. Teal'c naturally looks inside and sees pretty lights, so O'Neill wants in on that action, except this time it opens up and grabs his head while everyone looks on stupidly. In their defense, though, not a whole lot of options when the wall decides to pick you up by your skull. You don't want to shoot the thing while O'Neill's head is in there, after all, and they didn't really bring a lot of non-shooting tools with them. After the titles, the doc checks him out, but aside of having been catatonic for an hour, he seems fine, so back to work as far as he's concerned. Having a wall grab your noggin's just another day at the office for SG-1. General Hammond asks the obvious question.
Why didn't the device react to Teal'c?
I'll tell you why. Because it's racist. They speculate it may have sensitivity to the presence of the Goa'uld, similar to Thor's hammer. But I think more likely, when looked back with hindsight, it's probably because Jack has that ancient gene that triggered the circle and it triggered the cosmic noogie thing to happen. But back to the meeting. O'Neill seems even more flippant than usual, and he's drawing some kind of souped-up car Jack.
I am absolutely fine. There is nothing Cruvis with me.
Cruvis, of course, being the adjective form of Tom Cruise, meaning crazy beyond belief. In the face of evidence to the contrary, Hammond asks that O'Neill take it easy for a little while and stay on the base so he doesn't go spreading this around if it's contagious. I mean, you never know with that wacky alien technology, right? But of course, there's nothing crazy about O'Neill, not a thing, all right? Good. Now, on a completely unrelated topic, O'Neill wants to box with Teal'c, a man so full of muscles he can win bench press contests using only his penis. Starting to see the problem with this plan.
Keep your feet moving, and bend your cozars. Keep your cozars bent there.
I am unfamiliar with that word.
What, cozars?
Well, he did just get punched in the face by Teal'c. That's a pretty common reaction. I mean, last one that happened to said, and that's because it was actually an Abrams tank. They go to see Daniel.
Several times now, Colonel O'Neill has used strange words in place of common terms.
Sounds kind of like one of the foreign team members on the Super Friends. Daniel thinks it sounds a little like Latin, and O'Neill one-ups that by reading the words in that alien circle. He doesn't know what it means, just those words coming up when he looks at them. Dr. Fraser explains what's happening in part due to the 10% brain myth, that at any given moment we're only using a fraction of our brain, whereas Super Genius is using most of it. In truth, we're using most of it no matter what we're doing. If anyone should be using less, it's O'Neill after getting punched in the head by Teal'c. O'Neill's getting up to various bits of mischief, swiping the cool liquid center of Teal'c's staff weapon. That seems like a disproportionate prank for getting sucker punched. What we have learned is that the alien circle likely says the place of our legacy, which implies all this knowledge and such was supposed to be put into somebody's head, but from the sound of things, probably not O'Neill. His next trick is doing something with the computers in the command center. He doesn't know what.
Stop it. No, not here. I'm not targets.
Sir, I think he wants to finish what he's doing.
Yeah, thanks, Counselor Troy. I think we had that figured out. The computers shut down, but when O'Neill finishes his coding, the system comes up with a whole new mess of Stargates, ones that weren't on the wall of an Abydos, meaning that whole new locations the Goa'uld don't know about are out there. Well, that's great, but Hammond has a new order. Don't touch anything else, damn it! The next theory Daniel throws out is that the reason the aliens are using Latin is because they were the ancient ones that taught the Romans how to build roads, as opposed to the real world where it was probably the Etruscans. The Romans just turned Rhodes into mainstream sellouts. But Daniel speculates that the ancients were actually the ones who built the Stargates, and he's usually right on ancient aliens messing with history. Messing with brains, that's rather new. O'Neill has completely lost all verbal language skills. He can only write in English now, like explaining to Carter that the supermath he wrote on the chalkboard is in base 8, not base 10. Actually, not a bad basis. 8 can be divided in half, each half can be divided in half, each of those can be divided in half, plus it gives you an excuse to say, pieces of 8, pieces of 8, wah! To try and get some help, because having O'Neill wisecrack in Latin would make for a weird-ass show, they probe some of the new planets in the database and think they have a lead. And think of all the knowledge.
And sir, I believe that the equation Colonel O'Neill wrote on the blackboard is a revolutionary formula for calculating the distance between planetary bodies.
Haha, little astronomy joke. So Daniel and Jack will be subbed out for this mission to the desert planet, only it turns out that the desert planet is inhospitable. Go figure. There was a second sun they didn't know was there until it showed up like your racist drunk uncle at Christmas, all ready to ruin things for everybody. The DHD gets stuck in mid-dial, and that's preventing them from dialing out manually, and the team back in the SGC has no idea what to do. This is usually Carter's job. They suggest Mylar tents and portable cooling units, but against 2 suns you might as well try to pee on them and put the suns out. Meanwhile, Jack's been hard at work building a contraption, but the team takes priority, so Daniel shows a tape of it to O'Neill, who whips up a solution for how to fix the DHD and saves the day. He seems to be some kind of mega genius now.
These plans were perfect. Who came up with them? Colonel?
Relatively speaking. This conversation is interrupted by the gate dialing out, except no one told it to do that yet. They were actually just getting ready to send a team through, and it's going to throw the whole schedule off. The gate's also drawing more power than usual, but that's the cue for O'Neill and his whatchamajig. Thanks to that, there's enough power to dial out now, but with 8 coordinates instead of the usual 7. And with O'Neill mentioning that he needed to go through the Stargate to some other place, well, this might be the answer to his little conundrum. The gate he's connected to is in another galaxy, and there's no guarantee that Jack could come back from the other side. But at this point, he can't even understand the others anymore, so it's probable that if he doesn't go now, he's going to be trapped here for the rest of his life like this. An intellectual giant whose one weakness is apparently learning new languages.
Jack, you understand that if you do this, if you go, you might not be able to come back.
No more listening to your boring meetings? I'll take my chances with a wormhole. Oh, if only he'd stuck the landing. O'Neill arrives to discover he's among Thor's people, the Asgards, and it seems Thor's not alone. None of them believe in pants. But that's okay, because one of them has a mind-overwhelmed undoer built into her palm on the off chance that a human ever flew through the gate needing his brain cleansed. And they all laughed at her for 3 centuries, but she carried it every single day, waiting for this moment of vindication. And here it is. Time to sort him out so she can get in that victory lap.
Hello.
Welcome. To help you relax, we've taken the liberty of removing your pants. They explained that what happened to Jack was an accident. He's not developed enough to be able to handle that download, just enough to subconsciously know what he needed to do to get help, and to help Carter and Teal'c.
Very impressive.
Well, you know.
We did not think your brains had advanced even that far.
How is it you know so much about our brains?
The probes, of course. I thought those went into our butts. Yes, that was a bit of a misunderstanding. We fired Loki's ass over that. Having probed it first, of course. You can't return 10,000 anal probes, you know, even if you only use a few dozen of them. Cheap Gould bastards. That's why they're our enemies now. They explain how there was once an alliance of Asgard, ancients, the Nox, and furries, I think he said. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. The 4th race, whatever they were, probably those the ones who had the van, and so they had to be members of the club, no matter how much everybody hated them for eating pizza but never pitching in for it. They say humans have a lot of potential, but still have a lot to prove before they're ready to interact on the same level. But O'Neill gives the Captain Kirk speech about us already being out here because of our nature as human beings, and they assure him that we're on our way to becoming the 5th race, provided we have pizza. Back at the SGC, things are still messed up in the wake of what happened. They can't even close the iris, which is a good thing because O'Neill was sent through without a signal device because there was no way to know whether or not he might have been compromised. So he returns whole rather than splatting against a big metal plate, so that's a happy ending. The fifth race is a must-see, since it establishes several things that will play a huge part later on, not the least of which being the existence of the Ancients and establishing them as the Gate Builders. The key point of the episode, though, is to show us a different side of O'Neill. In the wake of his experience and with his meeting with the Asgard, the flippancy is gone, and the intelligence he usually pretends not to possess comes through. He returns to SGC completely devoid of the artifact's effects, shows warm optimism, which he so rarely allows himself to express. It belies the reason I believe that he came back to the Stargate in the first place. There's something wonderful out there in the universe, and he doesn't want to be separated from that.
All hail the Overlord! All hail the Overlord!
Using the function data we correlated so far from the DHD found in Antarctica.
You understand what he said?
It sounds like they have no idea.